George Kilpatrick, inspiration for the nation, celebrating people that we feel good about. Well, we got a special guest in the building. Melanie Littlejohn is the president and the CEO of the Central New York Community Foundation. We got a lot of questions for her. Joining me for this segment is our money maven, Vicki Brackens, president of Brackens Financial Solutions Network, LLC, and a registered representative at LPL Financial, member SIPC. Vicki, you know, I've been on assignment for a minute. I haven't seen you in a minute.
It's been a while. You've been all over the world. You've been to Ghana and down to Florida and all sorts of places this summer, George. So it is good to see you for the first time in probably several weeks.
Several weeks, although through the magic of radio, we've probably been around anyway.
Right.
But so, well, first of all, Melanie, it's so good to see you. By the way, Melanie, you had a milestone birthday recently.
I
How you
did.
feeling?
I'm feeling fabulous. Fabulous. I am enjoying being a part of the new club.
Okay, you in the club now, baby. You in the
That's
club.
right.
It is.
That's
How you
right.
feel
Yes.
being in the club? In the club. I should have had 50 Cent ready.
I know. I love it. I love everything about what comes with this new decade. Right. It's just cool. And you know, at first it was unnerving, but now that I'm here, I'm like, hey.
I know your family, your family had had some special things to do with you during last week. And so you've been featured properly. So let's talk about this. So Melanie is not a stranger to the community, right? I first met Melanie years ago. I'm gonna name the Urban League. Decades. Urban League of Onondaga County. Let me tell you, when the Urban League was on South Salina Street, okay?
Wow.
Yeah. Well, when we had an Urban League, Leon
Let's
Modesti.
start there. Okay.
Yes. And Melanie was the deputy director at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember the day when she announced that she was leaving to go to, at the time, Niagara Mohawk.
Yep.
And then you spent, well, your entire career after that,
Yep.
rising through the ranks, finally as vice president. And through all of that, you've had a lot of work in the community, chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. You've done it all. I mean, among other things. I'm cherry picking. Vicki can weigh in too.
Well, okay, we've got, chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. We've got board chair for Center State CEO, board chair for the Central New York Community Foundation. I think you were board chair at one point in time also for Zonta. Is that correct? Do I remember that? Or
No,
no,
the Boys and Girls Club.
Boys and Girls Club. Okay, Boys
Yeah.
and Girls Club. Okay.
Boys
So
and Girls.
over this many years, you have been an instrumental part and a strategic partner for the community as far as pushing forward the issues and the strategic plans that are necessary for us to create an equitable society.
And can I say this, because I'm going, you remember we talked about being grown, Melanie?
Yes.
And you have done it by being who Melanie is, never, ever compromising who Melanie is in all those different spaces. I want to know how you did that.
Let's start there. That's a good place to start, George.
You know, I think, and you know what, I gotta say the same is true for current company on the screen, right? Because you know that you know who your soul is, right? And so, you know, when you are motivated by soul and passion, it comes out of your pores. Right? And no matter what you do or where you are, what you represent oozes out of you, right? And we have all been brought up in understanding service and giving back, right? So whether you're giving back in a corporate setting, whether you're giving back standing on the corner talking to a bunch of young people, whether you're giving back in church, whether you're giving back to a nonprofit executive, or you're giving back to somebody who just needs to find their way. It's just about who we are. And I think it's also about knowing how you speak in a way in which people can hear and understand you and understand your heart. And I think that's how we've kept intact who we are, by never straying from your center, right? The way I talk about my center is different in a corporate boardroom than it is when I'm talking to teenagers, but the net effect is the same. You're going to get the message, you're going to get the truth, you're going to get the honesty, you're going to get sometimes the tough love, and sometimes you're going to get, please don't make me take my earrings off. So, in
Talk
a
to
way,
me, girl.
right. But you know, when we get to the don't let me take my earrings off moment, the way in which you deliver that message might be slightly different.
I see you.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
So it's interesting that you went there as far as take my earrings off moment, because I had been amazed over the years, Melanie, and watching you navigate both sides of the line, but always making sure that the community's interests were never overshadowed by the corporate needs of the time. Okay.
Right.
And so doing that for as many years as that you have, I'm sure you wrote a book someplace.
I need to finish my book. Right.
Okay. And okay, I'm poking a little bit. I'm sure you wrote a book someplace, because the guide to that type of skill is one that is needed across the board. Because what happens is, and I was reading an article very recently about the neurological impact, particularly for Black women, on having to navigate dual spaces at all times, sometimes triple spaces, yet still remain centered. So please, okay, I'm going to ask the question soon, but please don't forget to write the book. But here's the question. A tremendous career between the Urban League and National Grid, then National Mohawk, and then National Grid. And I get a call that surprised me to no end. Okay. You were going to accept the role as the new president of the Central New York Community Foundation. Not surprised me in the fact of you having the capability. There is no doubt that you have. It's kind of like when they were talking about Vice President Harris the other night, the most qualified. There is no doubt about the qualification to do this. But it is such a flip of a coin, or at least it appears to be a flip of a coin, that to make this change. So tell us really what drove you, or what motivated you to say yes.
So it's interesting. So a couple of things. One, I think life happens, right? So, you know, we had pivotal moments personally, whether it's, you know, dealing with family illness, to becoming a grandmother, to my work that I was doing and really leaning into on this transformational moment. And also feeling a sense of accomplishment at National Grid. I did what I came to do. Right? So, hey, we left good people doing good work who understood their assignment. Even in corporate America, everybody got an assignment, right? They understood their assignment. So I'm like, okay, your work here, Littlejohn, is done. And then life happens. Then there's illness. Then there's just unbelievable life happening, being a grandmother. And then there's all of this critically important work that we need to do right here, right now, to maximize this time. And I said, you know what? I will also tell you this, because I think the two of you will appreciate this so much. I got a call initially from someone in the community when they first heard about the change at the foundation, and I had lunch, and a person said, I think you really need to do this, right? And I said, oh, that's good, thank you, appreciate it, but life was still churning, but I'm like, thank you, I appreciate it, respect. And I kept saying to myself after, nothing to do with this role, hey, my prayer and focus was always direction, and use me as the tool and an instrument to do good, and they keep doing good. So after about the 20th call,
20 call.
I got 20. I stopped counting at 20.
So people were actually saying
20 people called you. Okay.
Different people called me
saying this position is open. You need to do this.
You need to do this. And then I'm like, okay, all right. I get it. Let me just throw my hat in the ring. And I didn't throw it in the ring with the expectation that I would get it. Because I'm also of the belief is if it's your door, it will open. Mm-hmm. Right? And I take nothing for granted. So I put my hat in the ring, and it was a long
time. It was so thorough, so involved, so extensive. But I am so thankful. I'm so thankful that at the end of the day, there was confidence and support behind my selection. And, for me, that's what matters in this moment, that I get a chance to continue to live the purpose, right? Or continue the assignment, but do it in this way 100% of the time. I'm not worried about storms like I used to, or emergencies. I'm always sending good vibes to my people at National Grid, but I'm not worried about them in the same way. So now my attention is 100% on this transformational moment. Okay. All right. So the, George, I don't know if you know this. I served on the Community Foundation Board some time ago.
The same time.
Yeah, exactly. I was
I mean,
sometime. I don't put the number on.
Listen, Vicki, we know you out here in these streets. Don't.
Okay. But if you recall, Melanie, when we were there in the beginning, the Community Foundation was more about parks and stuff versus programming, versus moving the needle on systems. Although we did make one very strategic move that year, the last year I was there, and that had to do with the literacy program. Funding literacy and the Imagination Library. To make sure that children had books and access to reading books and so forth. But there's been a shift from the 1927 model, when the Community Foundation opened up, to the 1990-ish model, to where you are now. Can you walk us through that?
Boy, when you think about the start of the Community Foundation and where it began, it's really, really important, right? That it began because of banks really getting out of the businesses of wills and community trust. And so they created this model that allowed their customers to have ways in which to support and do community good, right? But then it's grown and it's evolved, and there are all of these different types of mechanisms in which donors now fund the Community Foundation. They fund the Community Foundation based upon those things that they're motivated, people are motivated to support. But then the evolution of not only are you supporting what donors' aspirations are and those organizations in which they want to support, but you're leaning into community priorities. And that is the difference now in such a major way. So we really lean into the strategic priorities in a really big and bold way. We still do and meet donors' aspirations, but we have this big focus on things like literacy, equity, education, right? It all then begins to come together. So our strategic priorities are pretty bold, and it is a long ways from where we started in 1927, but a lot of the foundational things where people committed to still is very much a part of the fabric of the foundation.
$434 million
Yep.
total assets that you're sitting on.
Yep.
$297 million in investments. This is right, publicly available. So given that, Melanie, and I know that Vicki probably has some more follow-up questions to bring us forward, but let me ask you right now, right here, right now, is what's the difference that you want to make, right? Under your leadership, what's your vision as to what the Community Foundation is, and what you want it to be, if it isn't what you want it to be right now?
So a couple of things. There's $434 million in assets that we help grow those dollars and then use a portion of those dollars to begin to support community priorities. And then there's a huge amount of those dollars that are designated and allocated to organizations outlined by the Community Foundation. Let me just give you this one stat because I think this helps put it into perspective. Last year, we allocated $23 million, right, to hundreds of organizations, most of which were in the 5-county region we serve. And then there are some that go across the country, and some that are even go to international nonprofit entities, right? So, and there's about 4 million of that 23 million, about $4 million of that goes to responsive grant making. So an organization applies during our open grant period, and they get an opportunity to submit for a grant. And then there's the strategic priorities. The other dollars go into literacy, equity, and then of course we manage Say Yes to Education, right? That foundation or that fund. I want to grow that $4 million. That's our total unrestricted funds. That's what leans into priorities. That's what helps us support nonprofits in a bigger and bolder way, right? Even though $23 million, a huge portion of that is allocated to nonprofits, but I want to lean into, the team wants to lean into how we make a bigger impact on our priorities. Like at last week's announcement, we announced another $1 million to the Black Equity and Excellence Fund, right? Well, that fund, I'm just looking today, those announcements are starting to come out. We had 65 applications, 65 in this grant round. We made 19 grants. 19, right? So we spent $250,000 and $240,000 in this round. people, of course, I'm hearing from a lot of people saying, why wasn't my grant approved? And sometimes it has nothing to do with the quality of the grant. It's just that I don't have enough money. Right? I don't have. So sometimes you have to make little tiny decisions and nuances because you have a smaller pool of dollars. So here's what I want to begin to do. One, I want to be able to reverse that. But the way that I reverse that is by expanding my donor pool. Right? And I want to begin to talk to folks about being an everyday donor, because one of the biggest misconceptions is that you need to be a millionaire.
Thank you.
In order, one, to participate in philanthropy. No. That you need to have a gazillion dollars to start a donor advised fund, which is the easiest fund to start. That's not true. You do need $10,000 to start a donor advised fund. But then we have our community fund. So you got $5, put it into the community fund, right? That's the unrestricted pool. That's how we do more work with lead. That's how we put more money in the Black Equity and Excellence Fund so that we can give out more grants. I want to begin to create this connection that everybody counts here. No matter what size of donor you are, you matter. And I want people to feel that they have the opportunity to change the direction of the region by becoming a donor, right? Be a part of the process to change the process.
So
and that's a big thing for me.
I'm so glad you went through this, but I want to make sure one thing is clear, Melanie, because when I was first a member of the Community Foundation, it took me a little while to get my hands around this. It's $400 million.
Yes.
27 million. What
23.
23 million, excuse me. 23 million was used for grant making. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay. What was that? How did that number derive?
So that $434 million, we invested.
Okay.
We invest that money, and think about an average rate of return is about 7%, right? Over a period, it's about 7%, right? So we're earning a sizable amount of return on that investment. Right. And then we have a policy that says this is the amount of spend on each fund that can happen on an annual basis. So think about maybe 4%.
Okay.
Right. We then go back to all of our donors, right? And we give them, here's your allocation for this year. In their donor agreements with us, or in their legacy plans that they give us, and we'll talk about legacy plans, when I think about the foundation, there's two ways to think about the foundation: the giving that you do when you're alive, and the giving that you do when you're gone. So when you're gone, it's your legacy. And when you're here, there are things like fields of interest and donor advised funds that a donor. So George Kilpatrick comes into me and George says, Melanie, I want to open up a donor advised fund, and I want all of the dollars, my annual spend, to go to Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, right? Or
scholarship fund.
Or I wanted to go to the 100. I wanted to go somewhere. You as a donor say, my 4% on an annual basis, these are the 3 organizations I want to give it to. And this is how I want to break out my spend. Right?
So, okay.
And then there is The fee, and then so a portion of that is also the fee that we charge donors to administer those funds. That fee does two things. It pays for my staff and the buildings, and then it also pays for and seeds our unrestricted fund. So what do I need to do? I need to bring in more donors who really want to find an opportunity to lean into what their given priorities are. And I got to expand, I want to expand the pool so that we are doing more things that impact people in our community. And so I'm trying to change the perception of who the foundation is.
Okay. So
to
then we have
expand the reach.
Okay. So we got the major pool of money, which based on the investment returns provides what can be allocated toward a spend for this year, which was roughly 4%. But the donors who originated those funds, if they are still alive or still have direction, are dictating where those funds go. But the fee that you were charging is now being funneled over to the programmatic community fund. And that is the reason, because there's always a question, well, I see $400 million. How come it's only $4 million that's over here to be used in the community? And I wanted to make sure that that was explained.
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah. I mean, because people believe we spend down the $400 million. I said, no, this is why it will last forever.
Ever.
Because we're not spending it down. We are very, very guided and very strict around our investment policy, how we manage the money, because one, we got to be good stewards of the dollars that we have, right? And we need to make sure this it's around for another 100 years.
Correct.
Right? But the thing that I want to change is to ensure that I have a broad donor pool. And so tomorrow night at the Community Foundation, and I know this will air afterwards, we're hosting the Divine Nine.
Yeah.
Right, because we need to begin talking about that. Please don't keep money in a money market account. Not let's invest it so that you keep your scholarships going in perpetuity. You do your programs in perpetuity. You are not worrying about that. You are, where are you going to go where we do your taxes, we do your audit, right? We check, we cut every check you ask us to, and you get to stand in front of your audience and say, talk about your gift. We do all the back office, and but it's something that I want people to begin to get in their psyche around sustainability, right? That you don't have to go ask for or raise money because you already got it and you're growing your pool, right? Year on year on year on year. It's a powerful thing.
It is. Okay. It absolutely is. Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead, George. I see you better say something.
No, I was just going to say that before you started, you held a series of town hall. I shouldn't say before you started, as you were started, I should say.
Yep.
You held a series of town hall meetings in Onondaga County and as well as in Madison County. What did you hear that's different than what you thought you might hear in all these town hall meetings? Because you outlined a series of priorities that have been pretty much standard for a while. Lead, you absorb, say yes, investment in community and neighborhoods, nonprofits. Was there anything, and I should pause and say we're talking to Melanie Littlejohn, who is the president, CEO of the Central New York Community Foundation. One thing we have talked to Melanie, as many of you know, as the co-chair of the Micron Community Investment Fund, which that's not what we're here to talk about, but we didn't want to leave that honorific out either, as well as with Vicki Brackens, our money maven from Brackens Financial Solutions Network. So were there things that you heard that were different than what the Community Foundation has traditionally been focused on in all of the town hall meetings that you had all over the community to make sure that as broad a constituency was heard as possible.
Yeah, I heard a lot of the things that I was anticipating: workforce development, childcare, housing. I heard those, and I was prepared to hear those, right? Because remember, I had done a lot of the town hall meetings prior to me starting, so I was wondering if I was going to hear anything slightly different. One of the things that was pronounced, no matter if I was in a rural county, a suburban county, or an urban city, was mental health.
Ooh, I didn't see that coming.
Mm.
I did not. I swore you was going to say job opportunities.
Oh yeah. I mean, I heard what I expected.
Yeah.
No more job training with a certificate, no job.
Right.
Right. I heard that loud and clear. But I heard that from 13,000 people before I started doing my own, right? So I knew that was going to be there, right? But the mental health piece was huge. And I also heard, it was interesting, that people started to lean in and said, stop separating as well mental health and addiction, because you demonize one and you try to figure out how you support the other. And so sometimes one creates the other. It's cause and effect. So, but mental health, and mental health specifically for children, was off the charts. Everywhere I turned, it was off the charts.
And you weren't prepared to hear that.
I also, saw some data that began to talk about children post-COVID and how social isolation really probably has had a significant impact on a generation, right? But now that we've climbed out of the COVID hole, we're seeing how significant the mental health, the damage that was done during those 2 intense years of COVID. And what are we about to do? I heard about suicidal ideation being the highest suicidal ideation amongst Black boys is the highest, followed by Black girls and Latino girls. And that actual suicide, completing it, right? Some of the highest rates are young white girls, right? It was just astonishing what I heard. And then I began to hear that parents also, their mental health stuff was starting to show in bigger ways. One, because they couldn't help their kids. And secondly, when they couldn't help their kids and couldn't help themselves, they began to self-medicate. So I tell you, that's one of the biggest things that, just in terms of the intensity at which I heard it. And what would happen often, people would get up during each of the sessions and maybe say a couple of things. But the biggest issues happen after the meeting was over, for people who were embarrassed to say, I just spent the last 3 days in upstate with my kid because they had suicidal ideation, or someone saying, a nurse in one of the hospitals saying, parents sometimes just drop their kids at the emergency room and leave.
Leave?
And leave.
And I bet, Melanie, that this concern was across demographics, across all parts of our community, right? You know, you could be from around the way, you could be from uptown, and this is still an issue that I'm guessing was coming up loud and clear.
Yeah. But then if you add some of the other components, in particular what poverty creates.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Access to treatment, medication. I think what we're seeing, period, on all 5 counties is not enough providers, right? We also need to help support frontline people, in particular, who are with kids, teachers, administrators. God love Tony Davis, right? Tony
Superintendent Syracuse.
Superintendent of schools, Tony being one of the 5th largest district in the state. And when you begin to think about all of the multiple layers around mental health that he has to deal with just in his school population alone, it's daunting, right? And so it's, how can we create workforce development programs when you have people who might be ill and need some additional support? So it's this whole ecosystem that I began to hear about, but was really, really blown away by the mental health aspect.
So to kind of dovetail, hopefully I get this right, dovetail into that conversation. One of the things that I know that the Community Foundation has been very strategic in and has been trying to provide a platform for is strategic partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
To make sure that all of the entities that are out here who are trying to address a myriad of problems can now partner together, possibly even join together in a corporate way, as far as merging or acquisitions, in order to bring greater impact to those particular challenges. Tell us a little bit about your strategic partnership process and fund.
So the Strategic Partnership Fund is designed just to do that, encourage those entities that should be joining forces, collaborating, merging, bring them together, but help create the fund that allows those healthy relationships and partnerships to form, or those organizations who might consider a formal collaboration through a merger. These funds help them do that, right? It helps them do that. And believe it or not, we're out of the funds for this year.
So there are many people who are having these conversations, utilizing the fund to bring together more collaboration so we can have greater impact.
Absolutely. Think about this. There are over 800 nonprofits in the region. 800.
Okay, that's way too many.
Right? So how do we help nonprofits begin to think about how they partner, engage, to be stronger entities, right? Where they can certainly get bigger grants, and really begin to think about sustainability and servicing community in a bigger and bolder way.
Wonderful. So do you consider not-for-profit leadership or not-for-profit entities to be entrepreneurial? Or
Yeah, I really do, because many are.
Okay.
Right? Many nonprofits, in particular, the interesting part is in particular the smaller nonprofits, right? What we see happening is that they have a spirit and focus on programming and getting it right. The part that, like we also partner with Gifford, who is exceptional in helping shore up these small nonprofits to help them understand, here's how you manage an effective nonprofit. Here's how you do board governance. Here's how you look at a balance sheet. Here's how you create a balance sheet. Here's all of the insurances you need. Oh, and by the way, here's how you lead people. Because sometimes what happens with smaller nonprofits, the executive director is also the HR director, the finance director, the grant administrator, the facilities manager, right? And the landscaper. Right. So, and sometimes we have folks that just want to do program and not do all that other stuff. So at the same time, we're trying to fund organization. At the same time, we're trying to build donor base. At the same time, we're trying to lean in, collaborate on community priorities. We're also trying to help really strengthen the nonprofit ecosystem.
So when you, go ahead, Vicki.
I was curious because I'm sure you've seen through many of the announcements that have been on TV about all the corporations that are stepping back from their diversity and equity inclusion efforts. Yet you are leaning in.
Yes.
And leaning in a big time, in a big way. What's giving you the courage to do that?
And can I just jump into that as well, Vicki? Especially having the continuing and the maintenance of the Black Equity and Excellence Fund, Equity and Excellence Fund, specifically, right, to Black owned and operated businesses. I know that to maintain and to continue that in this environment, as Vicki suggests, must be something. So to Vicki's question, what's driving that? Is that what you were getting at?
Yes.
Vicki?
Thank you, George.
And I think what's driving it for me is what happens if we didn't do it. Right? The fear of not doing it. The fear of the gap that it would create by not doing it. But it's also about leaning in to Black and Brown communities, saying, here's an opportunity for us to lean in. Here's the opportunity for us to grow this fund in a way that has longevity. Here's the opportunity for, if you want to make a stance in creating change, then we need your help in doing it. Because when I just go through all of the data, right? And the Community Foundation, we are loaded with data, but here's just a couple of stats. 52% of Black children living in poverty versus 11% of white children.
In this community.
Yeah. All right. In Onondaga County, Black per capita income is 51% of that of white households. The percentage of Black third graders reading on grade levels is a third of that of white students in the Syracuse City School District. Black infant mortality is 2.5 times more than that of white infants. Must I go on with the data? For us not to do this, and for us not to lean in, because the data says, right, everything we always know, right? And it would be irresponsible of us as an organization not to do it. And yes, there is this whole notion around DEI and the erosion of DEI, but not here.
I was going to
Right.
say, right, because so many organizations was waving their flags about how they, in the wake of the George Floyd, let's be clear, right? A lot of response was for that incident. And here you are still doing it with others. They were like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they didn't do it. or they didn't continue the commitment to do it. So I think it's commendable. And you're all, I believe people are calling you from other parts of the country to see how you do that. Am I right about that?
You are correct, right? And I got to tell you, it's hard. It's hard work. I have people tell me our organization is too woke,
Okay.
right?
I was going to go there. So, all right. Thank you,
No,
Melanie.
no. And but that's,
She already
you
told you
know
she
what?
would get the earrings ready, Vicki.
Right. No, but what it does is to say, let's provide education on what the data says. Let's also tell you the vast array of how we fund a plethora of organizations.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Right.
one blip in the whole
This
thing.
is right. So, so I think I am always in truth telling, truth slaying mode, right? I need to constantly tell the story. But the biggest thing for me now, I want this Black Equity and Excellence Fund funded and supported to create an endowed level that will last in perpetuity.
So, what's the number? I need the number.
I want $10 million.
Okay. We need the number. All right.
10 million. That's
Okay.
base.
All right.
I like that.
We can do it.
And I like that Vicki said, "What's the number?" Because let's not talk in. What's the number? Now we
10
know what
million.
we're working at.
No,
Right?
okay. So
where are we now, and where do we need to be?
We need to grow this fund by $8 million.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So we need $8 million. Okay. Do we have a timeline?
I would, my timeline was yesterday because the needs and the numbers are growing.
Mhm.
But what I would like to see is that $8 million by the time we get to our 100th anniversary, which is in 3 years.
In 3 years.
3 years.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
All right then. So as I say all the time, George, it's just a matter of math, folks.
It's just math.
It's 8 million over 3 years. Divide 3 into 8. That tells you how much per year. And we have the resources. I'm going to do the plug here. We have the resources within the community, across the board, in all spectrums, in all demographics, in all races, in all genders. We have the resources to make this happen and make it happen actually pretty easily. Because I've seen $8 million raised in a board meeting. Believe me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So I know that it can be done. And the advisors that are out there, the financial advisors who are working in this particular community, your clients' strategic estate plans or what conversations you need to start having with them in order to drive this effort and create the legacy that they always wanted. One of the things that we always want is, I want to leave this earth knowing that I did something that's going to be remembered. Here it is.
Yeah.
Here's the tool. And as Melanie said earlier, you don't even have to administer it. You just have to show up and move the resources into the place and everything else. I am a fund holder. I'll say it loud and clear.
You are.
Have been for a
one
long
of the
time.
first. One of the first.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So I know that it works. And I know the impact that it can have. And it's really a matter of math. That's all it is, George. All right, George, I'm gonna let you have the last question. I'm on my soapbox now because you see I'm getting revved up.
Well, I have two. I have two last questions plus,
All right.
and Melanie can get a thing. And I told Melanie this wouldn't be as long as it is, but you know how it is when me and Vicki get together. Lastly, Melanie, two things. One, just circling back to, you heard about mental health. So what's the then solution? How does the community foundation see itself dealing with what has clearly surprised, or not surprised, maybe is not the word, but a concern that has been certainly amplified through your, what is the solution to that?
So a couple of things, be a convener, convene those like organizations. Like when they come to us, we say, have you talked to blah, blah, blah. Let's bring them together to begin to have conversations of ways in which they can partner or drive. You know, like this last round of the BE&E fund, and I'm not going to give some of those names, but there are a couple of Black-led organizations that are doing some of this work very creatively. You know, some people use different methodologies to get at getting people to talk and process their trauma. So we've supported a few of those in this round, and it's being consciously convening people and entities, and then trying to leverage our unrestricted dollars, which we need more of, leverage those to lean in to support more of this work.
Well, I'll go back to what Vicki said. What's that number?
Right. Remember that number for the unrestricted, when I forgot to give you my overall big goal. My overall big goal for the organization is to get the organization to $1 billion in assets.
There you go. Okay.
Right. So y'all know I got to raise about $600 million to do that.
Well, we're going to do some, the investment returns are going to help.
Right. The investment returns will help significantly.
Okay.
Right. But the more that I have there, the more that unrestricted pool grows, which will allow us to help partner with other nonprofits, including organizations like United Way and all of the other big organizations to help support their work. But to help deliver on this, we need more unrestricted funds.
Amen. Yes. All right. Lastly, it's not lost on me that 2 African-American women in this community are leading 2 of the largest philanthropic organizations in this community. What is the significance for you of being one of those Black women, African-American women, doing that in this community?
The power of the moment is not lost on me. And working alongside, and I will call her out because she is a giant. She's a leader. She bleeds this community. Sheena Solomon.
Gifford Foundation.
Gifford Foundation doing the work. Her level of community engagement is phenomenal, right? But for us, and Sheena and I do a lot of things together, right? Because when you have been that little girl that you're trying to support, when you gave birth to the little boys you're trying to help grow into kings, you pour a different part of yourself into the work. This isn't work for me. It's not work. This is not work. This is purpose. And it's about, I said I hit that club. Yeah. Right? It's about an urgency to get a lot of things right and get it right now.
You said the power of the moment is not lost on you. Let me add this to what you are saying around this moment. I was at a reception recently where you made it very clear that this is about the legacy, and you brought out your grandson and your husband and, your soon to be extended family, right?
Right.
That's what you said this was about for you.
It is. And George, I'm doing it for your babies, right? And Vicki, your babies, right? I want your niece and nephew to come back.
Lord, yes.
Right? And GK, I want our kids to see this space, and I want our kids and our grandchildren to feel like this is a place where they can thrive. I want this place to be a place where everyone who has ever been othered to feel like they belong, and it's community. And it's a lot, you know. And so when I sit at a table with Sheena Solomon and Sheena can finish my sentence and I can finish hers, I'm saying I am thankful. But I'm also thankful for being in a moment with good people like the Allen Foundation, right? You know, there are
Meg O'Connell.
Meg O'Connell, right? I am so thankful for people and Meg's family. And I'm in the room with other good people who really do want to do good, right? I am. They really want to do good. And sometimes it's just about guidance and helping. And there are people who want to do good. Now we just got to get everybody continuing to amplify the good, because the Lord knows we got enough work to do.
So $51,000 a week, Melanie.
Oh,
that's it.
To get to the what? To the 600, to the 1 billion,
To the 8 million.
To the 8 million. Okay.
All right,
Okay.
51,000 to get to the
Tell
8 million.
your team. Okay.
Yes. And
We're
then
all
we got-
51,000 a week over the next 3 years will get you to the 8 million. Okay.
And we're gonna start tomorrow night with D9, because I know there's $51,000
in that room.
in
That's
that
right.
room per organization.
Okay. All right.
Well, I wanted you to have a number. Okay.
There it is.
So now you can go there tomorrow. You
There
know, by the time that people see this, will already have
Because
happened.
that's exactly. But the challenge, as always, and that's why I was pointing out to my colleagues, lump sums will chop that down quickly.
Yep.
Setting up funds, donor advised funds, but also setting up insurance plans that have the legacy structure for contribution to the community foundation. And you can set up the estate plan to take care of both the family and the community foundation.
How about that?
Okay, so we need to do this. We need to have more conversation.
Payment plan.
Payment plan. Yeah, I love it.
Y'all, look, we will put something on layaway.
Thank you.
Right?
Easy pay.
Lay away your legacy right now.
Lay away your legacy.
I'm gonna use that.
You know that's gonna be Vicki talk next one of these next.
Lay away your legacy. You got it.
Lay away your legacy.
So, we talk about that soon. Melanie, we know that the community foundation, as you say, is broad. It's it's the entire community, right? And our audience is mostly interested in what's going to happen for us. But we are very clear that Melanie Littlejohn is the president and CEO of the Central New York Community Foundation, serving 5 counties and countless organizations. Y'all heard the numbers. $250,000 to the Black Equity and Excellence Fund out of the 4 million that they have. So don't trip. She's talking about everybody, but this show talks about us. Okay, that's want to make it clear.
It is.
Hey,
there you go.
There it is. There it is. It talks about
we
us.
should also say that Central New York Community Foundation is a partner with Inspiration for the Nation, and we will be meeting over the next several weeks some of those 19 who are recipients of the Black Equity and Excellence Fund. We want to thank Melanie Littlejohn. Unless you had anything else.
Nope, I think I said it all.
Melanie Littlejohn is the president and the CEO of the Central New York Community Foundation. Vicki Brackens is the president of Brackens Financial Solutions Network, LLC, and a registered representative of LPL Financial, member SIPC. All new Money Maven in a couple of weeks, but we couldn't keep Vicki from this conversation, and that's why she's here today. Vicki, always good to see you.
You too.
No matter
And I'll
when
see you in
she
2
shows
weeks.
up. Say it again, Vicki.
So I'll see you in 2 weeks.
And no matter when Vicki shows up, she's still America's Money Maven. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Melanie. Inspiration for the Nation.